Well, it's here. Time for me to step down and retire as chairman of Chrysler.
And with that came an end of an era. When Lee Iacocca retired in 1992, not only did Chrysler lose a strong leader, America lost one of the major links to the glory days of the U.S. auto industry. None of those men were in management of any of our companies. Though his legacy with Chrysler is very mixed, he did save it from bankruptcy, but he did build very uninspiring vehicles during his reign. The actions toward the end of this reign led directly to what is now a shell of a company. Let us take a closer look at his tenure at Chrysler. Lee Iacocca. See, Lee Iacocca was known for a few things in his career. You know, he created the Mustang and then saved Chrysler from bankruptcy. But I bet you'd find it kind of amazing to learn that his actions while CEO of Chrysler basically led it to no longer be an independent company. Now, to fully understand Iacocca's time at Chrysler, we must understand his time at Ford, especially the end of his time at Ford. Because at Ford, he was well known for incredible things. He created the Mustang. He helped design the Mark III and the Pinto. Every one of those, you cannot argue. They are successes, huge successes. But he also moved the Falcon up brand in 1967, which doesn't seem like a big deal. But what it did is it took it out of the small car category, moved it to the midsize. And Ford had nothing in the small car category, which then left it very vulnerable to foreign imports. Now, the one thing he did, sort of the grumblings internal, was he wanted to take all the cars and base them off of that mid-size Falcon platform. And he started doing it with the Granada. And actually, this even went on to go to the Versailles in 1976. This didn't go over well at Ford, but then the final nail in the coffin is when he went to the Deuce, which was Henry Ford's second, and said, hey, let's start making front-wheel drive, small, compact cars to compete with the imports. The Deuce was not very enthusiastic about this because, rightfully so, he knew that Ford was a mid-sized family car company, and it did very well selling those cars. Totally changing their philosophy was not in the cards at that time. So this happened in 1977, and it was shown the door that year. The funny thing is that he was now a free agent, and at the right time, Chrysler needed a new CEO. So they hired him because he was still a legend in the automobile industry, and they couldn't pass this guy up. It isn't that Lee Iacocca was, self-destructive or power hungry. Why he did these things at Ford. He was a revolutionary. Like the Mustang was a car that filled the niche no one else knew we needed. But this type of personality gets bored when things become good. It's kind of like Winston Churchill running England. During the war, phenomenal. After the war, loses his first re-election because he wasn't very good at leading the company when it wasn't in strife or in crisis. And this pretty much describes Lee Iacocca after 1985. Chrysler was now very profitable, and they were just building, cheap, forgettable, disposable products. Honestly, this would have been a good time for him to find a successor and leave with the win. Sadly, this is not how things played out. Iacocca just hung on, even tightening his reins on Chrysler more. Now, I picked 1985 because this is a great example of how well Chrysler was doing. This year, they earned $1.64 billion in profit. This is following up 1984, where they had $2.38 billion in profit. I mean, they were no longer in danger of going bankrupt. They really should have never, ever been in trouble again. But that all changed when the crosstown rival, which had gotten rid of Iacocca 8 years earlier, changed the car landscape forever. In December 1985, Ford unleashed the Ford Taurus, an American front-wheel drive car that was powerful, had a modern shape, and was perceived to have as good quality and options as any import. All this while Chrysler was still selling the same K car that they were in 1980. I mean, Chrysler was now in trouble and they didn't even know it. I mean, this was a seismic shift in the car business, just like 21 years earlier when Iacocca himself unleashed the Mustang onto the car world. But this time, he was on the receiving end of this incredible innovation, and kind of similar to the way Chrysler handled the release of the Mustang in 1964 with the Barracuda. It turned out quite badly. But you wouldn't know this outwardly when you looked at Chrysler, because they weren't standing still. They were still adding to their brain trust, to their upper management. Future me here. I have a town named Lutz near me, and it just naturally comes out as Lutz, not Lutz, because they went over and they found Bob Lutz from Ford. Now, Bob Lutz was a very big get because he was very good in international business. He was born in Switzerland. He ended up working in BMW and helped lay the groundwork for the 3 Series. After that, he was hired by Ford International for Europe, where he oversaw the Escort 3 and then the incredibly successful Ford Sierra. With all that success, he became executive vice president in North America. He laid the groundwork for the Ford Explorer, which totally changed the landscape again for the car industry in the United States. But in some foreshadowing, Lutz had a little problem with his superiors at Ford, and especially with future CEO Red Poling, which kind of led him looking for the greener pasture. Along with bringing in talent like Lutz, Iacocca set his eyes on acquisition since the company was flush with cash. In '87, not only did he buy Lamborghini, yes, the Italian sports car maker, for $30 million in cash, it acquired the 4th largest car company in the United States, American Motors, mainly for Jeep, but also for the new Bramley plant in Canada. And they paid a staggering $1.5 billion for the company. On the surface, this all looked huge. But in reality, this was Chrysler trying to buy development instead of actually doing development. At this point, Chrysler was still using the LA V8s, which is the 318, 360, which were designed in 1964 with only minor changes to them. They were using these in what was left of the rear-wheel drive cars, their trucks, and their vans. They had zero development of V8s in the 1980s. Now, on Ford and General Motors, basically were spending the entire decade modernizing their V8s because they were the bread and butter of their business. The other issue was that Ford and General Motors were spending millions on V6s in the 1980s. Chrysler kind of had a little hole here because they didn't develop any of their own V6s during the 1980s. They actually put the Slant 6 out to pasture in 1984 and just used Mitsubishi V6s in their products. Without a homegrown V6, Chrysler was quite vulnerable in the mid-sized car market. The only other thing that they acquired with AMC was their inline 6, which was a very highly regarded engine, but unfortunately, even that design was 25 years old at that point. Iacocca and by default, Chrysler were no longer on the cutting edge. And this also showed in the design language that Iacocca loved. I mean, let's look at the K car, which is basically a utilitarian box. And basically all the other cars that they developed had this utilitarian box. They used wood trim on a lot of the models, harkening back to the 1960s. The other part of the design language that they were using that seemed very outdated could be seen in the LeBaron convertible and coupe with its harsh angles and its hidden headlights. Hidden headlights seemed to be a very big fashion trend for Chrysler. They released 2 cars in 1990, the failed 3rd iteration of the Imperial, the 1990 New Yorker, and all along the Dodge Daytona, all with very jagged body lines and hidden headlights, which was totally the opposite of what the rest of the market was doing. Of course, the end result of this design language and not having anything updated was an incredible decline in sales and profits. And by the end of the decade, Chrysler was now again struggling and facing bankruptcy. But it wasn't all gloom and doom. The one bright spot was the guy I mentioned earlier, Bob Lutz. Now, Bob Lutz spearheaded a brand new halo car called the Dodge Viper. Lutz knew the company needed an image change in the late 80s. And so he went out and he leveraged the Lamborghini, which they had just bought, ability to forge aluminum blocks and make V10s.
And here it is.
And they ended up designing the rawest performance car since the Shelby Cobra. Now, this was a major feather in Lutz's cap. It made the automobile world take notice that maybe this was the guy that should replace Lee Iacocca. There were many articles written that Bob Lutz looked like the next guy that should step up. And this even got closer to reality when a surprise defection happened in the late 80s. Gerald Greenwald was actually the financial brains behind the turnaround in 1979-80, and he had come over with Iacocca from Ford. He was a financial guy. He literally set up all the planning to cut costs and be able to get Chrysler profitable again. He left and became head of United Airlines, who had just been bought out by their employees, and ended up being very successful there. So this was a complete blow to the succession plans that Iacocca in his mind had made. So now this created an incredible turmoil that eventually led to Chrysler's demise. Iacocca did do the right thing. He did elevate Lutz after Greenwald left to second in command. And with all this turmoil in the 1990s and weak sales and cost cutting, he was the logical choice at this point to take over the company when Iacocca was going to step away in 1992. But then it seems like Iacocca's ego kind of got in the way, and he chose Bob Eaton.
At a special meeting Saturday night in New York, the Chrysler Board of Directors named Bob Eaton vice chairman and chief operating officer of the company and designated him to succeed me as chairman and CEO next January 1.
Bob who? Literally Bob who? Bob Eaton was famously known for designing the worst ever front-wheel drive car by any manufacturer ever, the GM X-Type. This thing set records for recalls, and he was the head engineer of this. In 18 years at General Motors, I could not find anything of any substance that Bob Eaton did in his tenure. There was nothing there saying this man should run the third largest automobile manufacturer in the United States. But it seems like Iacocca picked him to be his successor in 1992 for two reasons. A, he would never be able to overshadow Iacocca's legacy, and that he felt that with his time with General Motors, he'd be able to continue to grow the business. So Iacocca steps down in 1992 after 14 years of being CEO of Chrysler Corporation. As he was leaving, Chrysler releases the car that Iacocca had squashed from being developed. They had acquired the actual development of this car from AMC in 1987. And it was named the LH. The LH, which a lot of people in the automobile press felt it stood for Last Hope, debuted in the fall of that year with the Concorde, the Intrepid, and the Eagle Vision. You remember Eagle was a division of Chrysler? Yeah, exactly. These cars were based on a Renault design, a longitudinal front-wheel drive drivetrain. Iacocca actually did ads for this K car replacement, but then again, Iacocca would do an ad to sell iced Eskimos. It wasn't that he really believed in the product. He just knew that he needed to do this to help the car to sell, well, at least in his mind. Now, it was published that Iacocca retired on his own accord. And the thing is, the actions after he left seemed that not to be true. It seemed like it was just good PR done by Chrysler Corporation to make it look like everything was a smooth transition. Iacocca's actions after he retired kind of cast doubt on that PR story, because in 1995, he teamed up with Kirk Kevorkian, one of the richest men in the world, to try to bring Chrysler private. It seems like Iacocca realized that he made an incredible mistake having Bob Eaton as the CEO of the company, or maybe it was just that he was out of the limelight and wanted to get back in it. Don't actually know the true motivation of this, but it was a very interesting thing that they were going to do. And they were offering a lot of money for the company. They were offering $22.8 billion. Unfortunately, the board of directors absolutely refused this offer. This kind of set up the entire stage for Chrysler to be acquired by Daimler only a few short years later. Now, to put this in perspective, though Chrysler was no longer going in bankruptcy or even close to it, it never regained any of the market share that it had from 1975 at its high peak, which was about 14%. After the LH and the Dodge Ram, which Lutz also developed, came out in 93 and 94 respectively, they actually were above 15% market share for the first time since 1975. And they even stayed higher than that when they were acquired by Daimler. There was almost no reason for them to be sold except that their management was not very good, which I think Iacocca realized, hence the failed takeover attempt. Here's one final thought on Iacocca's lasting legacy of Chrysler Corporation. It can be seen in the sales prices. Daimler bought Chrysler for $35 billion. 10 years later, they sold it to a private equity firm named Cerberus for $7.5 billion, taking a almost $28 billion loss. A few short years later, in 2011, after going through bankruptcy in the Great Recession, Cerberus unloaded Chrysler to Fiat for a whopping $4.8 billion. Fiat became FCA, Fiat Chrysler, and they just waddled along through the teens and then ended up merging with Peugeot Group in 2020 to create the now dumpster fire Stellantis. I want to hear your thoughts. Was it Iacocca's hubris, his ego, his lack of seeing past his own term there that caused Chrysler to fall so far? Was it just a bunch of really bad coincidences that had this total destruction of a once proud car company? I mean, let me know in your thoughts below, because this is actually very fascinating how basically the pebble effect or the butterfly effect, where something small becomes a giant, windstorm. I just want to know your comments below. If you got something to this, hit like. If you like car stuff, subscribe. Hey, hype it. And as always, if you have a fun car or a cool car, take it out, because you'll make someone's day, probably be your own. And I'll catch you really soon.